So friends, a federal appeals court, in an opinion that was authored by a judge who was appointed to the bench by President Ronald Reagan, just told Donald Trump and the Trump administration, we see what you're doing, and we perceive it as you trying to, quote, reduce the rule of law to lawlessness, close quote. Friends, it feels like the tide may be turning. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, I'm going to take a chance here and say you've probably never seen a federal appeals court opinion like the one that was just handed down by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in the Abrego Garcia case. I know I have never seen anything like it. Now, you undoubtedly know that Abrego Garcia was basically kidnapped by the Trump administration, stuffed onto a plane, sent down to El Salvador, where the United States told the president of El Salvador to imprison Garcia and others that had been wrongfully deported. The U.S. is paying taxpayer dollars to detain, confine, jail Mr. Garcia and others down there. And this prompted a lawsuit. And the judge presiding over that lawsuit, a Maryland federal court judge, Judge Sines, directed the Trump administration to facilitate Mr. Garcia's release and return. The Trump administration ran up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court affirmed that order, directing the Trump administration to facilitate Garcia's release and treat his case the way it should have been treated. And then Judge Sines started to look into whether the Trump administration should be held in contempt for violating her court order and, in substance, the Supreme Court's order, affirming her order. But, you know, the Trump administration doesn't like the fact that Judge Sines is litigating this potential contempt issue. So they ran up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. They said, please tell her to stop. Put a stay on what she's doing. She shouldn't be doing this to us. Well, not only did the appeals court not tell Judge Sines to stop, they communicated loud and clear. In substance, they see what the Trump administration is doing, and you know what? The emperor has no clothes. Let's start with just a little bit of the new reporting, and then we're going to have a look at this short order, this ruling from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. But first, this from CBS News. Appeals court says Trump administration's claims in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia should be shocking to Americans. And that article begins, a federal appeals court said Thursday that the Trump administration's assertions in the case of a Maryland man who it admitted was mistakenly deported to El Salvador should be shocking to all Americans, and made an appeal to the executive branch to vindicate the importance of the rule of law. The brief, unanimous opinion, authored by Judge Harvey Wilkinson of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, rejected a request from the Trump administration to pause a district judge's order that required it to facilitate the release of Garcia, a 29-year-old who lives in Maryland, from Salvadoran custody, and explain the steps it has taken to return him to the U.S. And friends, wait until you hear some of the things that this Ronald Reagan appointed judge, writing for a unanimous three-judge panel, had to say about what the Trump administration is trying to pull here. Order. Upon review of the government's motion, the court denies the motion for an emergency stay. The relief the government is requesting is both extraordinary and premature. While we fully respect the executive's robust assertion of its Article 2 powers, we shall not micromanage the efforts of a fine district judge attempting to implement the Supreme Court's recent decision. It's difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case, it's not hard at all. The government, the Trump administration, is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it, the Trump administration, claims in essence that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking, not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear. And friends, you might recall that Donald Trump's DOJ lawyers have been taking the position in court that when they've been ordered to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release and return, it requires them to do nothing. Nothing. In fact, they said, well, all we have to do is if Mr. Garcia presents himself at a port of entry into the United States, we have to let him come in. That's all we have to do to facilitate his release and return. Well, the appellate court judges had a little something to say about those asinine claims. The Supreme Court's decision does not allow the government to do essentially nothing. It requires the government, the Trump administration, to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. Facilitate is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken, as the Supreme Court has made perfectly clear. And friends, the appeals court then goes on to say that if they were to accept the Trump administration's definition of facilitate, it would reduce the rule of law to lawlessness and tarnish the very values for which Americans of diverse views and persuasions have always stood. And then, friends, there's this passage in which the appeals court judges basically say, you know, we're not stupid. We see what you're doing. If today the executive, the president, claims the right to deport without due process and in disregard of court orders, what assurance will there be tomorrow that it will not deport American citizens and then disclaim responsibility to bring them home? And what assurances shall there be that the executive, the president, will not train his broad discretionary powers upon his political enemies? The threat, even if not the actuality, would always be present, and the executive's obligation to take care that the laws be faithfully executed would lose its meaning. Friends, this court opinion is the rule of law at its finest. This is allegiance to the Constitution. This is America as it's supposed to be. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.